Hey friends, my name is Oleg, this is Mr. Bond, welcome back to the YouTube channel. In today's video we're going to talk about value for money and how important value for money really is. I'm going to let Mr. Bond go because he's already done his part, and I know if I didn't put him in this video I would never hear the end of it in the comment section below. So here he is. Now let's let him go, take his nap, well deserved might I say, and let's talk about value for money in watches. Value for money is kind of a complicated topic to talk about, but basically what got me thinking about value for money in watches is this watch right here, a Calvin Klein watch with the best value for money, the best specs for money that I've ever seen in a timepiece. So it has a sapphire crystal stainless steel case. It comes from a Swatch Group. It is Swiss-made watch with the ETA 2824 automatic movement, and all of that could be had for $150 US. I think now they're even cheaper. Now before we go any further, this is not an ad for this specific watch or for any watch for that matter. This is just coming off the top of my head, kind of expressing my thoughts. So not an ad, don't buy this watch unless you want to buy the watch, of course. So this watch right here, amazing specs for $150 US. I think it's impossible to beat. If you put those specs on paper and you were to show it to someone, they'd be like, yeah, that's impossible. You will never get a watch with these type of specs for this type of price. Now the watch is not perfect. It's a bit too large to be a dress watch. It has too small of a crown. It only has 50 meters of water resistance. I know you're gonna start with the whole water resistant thing, but anyways, only 50 meters of water resistance. The dial, I don't know, it's okay. It's not the ugliest watch, but it's not the best looking watch. Also, the set of hands are kind of flat, but overall, not a bad value proposition, if only not for the brand, Calvin Klein. And those are the comments that I got in a video about this watch. People were saying things like, yeah, the specs are amazing, but I will never wear this watch on my wrist because it has that Calvin Klein logo on it. It's a fashion watch, it's associated with underwear. I don't want to have underwear on my wrist. You know, comments along this way, and some of them were really funny, which I appreciate, but kind of the sentiment behind it is, hey, I'm not gonna wear this watch because of the brand. Now, would that make people watch snobs? I don't think so. I think if you don't want to wear a watch for a certain reason, like you don't like the brand, that doesn't necessarily make you a watch snob. You will really become a watch snob if you look down on someone else wearing a watch that you don't agree with. Well, then you're a watch snob. But if you just don't like a watch for whatever reason, totally fine. So these amazing specs for an amazing value got me thinking, well, what if a micro brand offered the same type of specs in a totally unknown watch? They put it on Kickstarter, guess what? That watch would get funded in a day. People would line up to buy an unknown micro brand for $150 with the ETA 2824 movement, sapphire crystal, stainless steel case, you know, all these things. And not a Calvin Klein watch. So clearly, value for money matters more in some cases than the other cases. And I thought that was very interesting, isn't it? Because you would think, hey, an established company, and especially a watch coming from a Swatch Group, because Calvin Klein, not anymore, but before they were partnered up with Swatch Group, and they were made pretty much at the same factories as the Tissot, as Hamilton watches, so the quality is there. I mean, it has that Swatch Group quality. So what's wrong with it? Is it just the brand? Is it what the brand represents? And then I started thinking more, what is important to me in a watch? And would I actually buy this watch if it wasn't for this YouTube channel? And to be honest, I wouldn't. I wouldn't buy the watch just for myself, even though it was $150 or $130 US. So why wouldn't I buy a watch with these amazing specs for such a great price if I didn't have this YouTube channel? And it all comes down to enjoying the watch and enjoying looking at the watch. No matter how great the specs are in a watch, if I don't enjoy looking down at it, if I don't connect with the watch, I know it sounds very pretentious, and I don't need to make this video pretentious at all, but if you don't connect with the watch, if you don't connect with your timepiece, what's the point of wearing it? It could have the best movement, it could have the best specs and, you know, limited edition and all these things, but if you don't enjoy it, well, it's just not worth wearing it, it's not worth buying it. To me, I'd rather wear a watch with a special connection to it, let's say like an $8 Timex that I have in my collection that I really love, and it doesn't have great specs. Of course, it's an $8 Timex. In fact, servicing the watch costs more than the watch itself. But because I love it so much, it doesn't really matter to me what type of specs the watch has. So that kind of brings us back full circle to the specs. Do specs on a watch really matter? I mean, as someone who reviews watches on the internet, as someone who talks about watches on the internet, I constantly talk about specs for money, value for money. And that's a good measurement of the quality of the watch, especially for micro brands, because that's what separates them from mainstream brands a lot of the time. The type of specs that they offer, often a more affordable price than the mainstream brands, and that's how they stand out. And specs is a pretty good measurement of value. And of course, none of us want to be taken for a ride, so to speak. None of us want to spend money on a watch that's not worth it, that doesn't have the best specs, that doesn't compete with other watches in the same category that perhaps offer better specs. So we don't want a watch with the best specs intentionally, but also I don't think we should get hung up on specs alone, because there's so much more that goes into the watchmaking. The quality of the watch, the quality of the finish, the execution, the brand reputation, the brand heritage, what the watch represents to you personally, how you like the design. All these things are very important, maybe equally important, maybe even more important than just the specs. And I think as watch collectors, as watch enthusiasts, sometimes we get caught up just thinking about the specs. We only want the best specs, the always sapphire crystal, the always best automatic movement. What's the best automatic movement in the best micro brand that I can buy for the most affordable price? Oh, these guys offer the Sellita SW200, but these guys only offer Seiko NH35. So I'm gonna buy the Sellita one, even though maybe I don't like that watch as much as I like the one with the Seiko NH35. But hey, it has the better movement, so it's better value for money. Well, yeah, maybe on paper it's better value for money, but maybe for you personally, buying that watch with a little bit of a worse specs would be the better decision. Now, it's easier to misunderstand what I'm saying here in saying that, hey, you should buy watches that are better value for money. You should buy watches that, you only love what they look like. That's not what I mean at all. But what I am saying is that specs are not everything. It's not the whole equation. It's just a part of the equation. So make sure that everything else within the watch works for you. The last thing I'll mention about this Calvin Klein watch is that a lot of people did buy it just for the movement alone, to have it as a replacement movement or to mod the watch, replace the dial and things like that. And that's totally fair enough, because sometimes servicing ETA movement would cost you $150, so it's easier just to buy a watch like this and to put a brand new movement in your watch, sort of swap the movement. So that's why a lot of people bought these, and a lot of people bought it to replace the dial and kind of modify the watch and make it their own. So there are ways around it, and there are reasons and purposes to buy the watch for best value for money. And if it's important to you, then of course you go that direction. And that's it. That's the video. That's all I wanted to talk about. I thought it was just very interesting how caught up sometimes we get on value for money, but then when a watch like this comes along that has amazing value for money but doesn't necessarily come from the brand that you would want to buy from, you stay away from that watch. But if the watch came from a micro brand, an unknown brand, we would line up to buy it. So I think that's all very interesting. Clearly, not just value for money is what's important in the watch. I appreciate you watching this video until the end. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss more videos like this in the future. Also, leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about this subject. Value for money, how important it is to you personally, and what do you think about it in general. I always enjoy reading your comments. By the way, today on my wrist, I'm wearing Rolex Datejust. I purchased this watch over a year ago. Actually, I should do my 1 year on a wrist update. That video is to come in the future. But I do have my buying experience of the watch posted about a year ago. I will leave a link to that video in the description below. Also in the description below, there are two other links. The first link is to bondnatostraps.com if you're looking for a good quality NATO strap and want to support this YouTube channel at the same time. Buying one of these NATO straps is a good way to do so. The second link is a secret link. Have a look if you're curious. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Damn it, dog. Every time you manage to drool on my pants. Every single time. And somehow on my arm. You have a talent.